Alright, so if you really think about how you would do something like this, to my mind, you got a couple different options. Number one, you could simply handle it as somebody's private money that they've invested, and they would like to see something happen to it once it gets to a certain state, and that when they die, they will it to some sort. They create some sort of trust that's established of what it can do with the money. However, I feel that that's somewhat limited. It kind of like it assumes that there won't be someone who could, directly in line. There's no guarantee with a will and testament that, that's going to be uncontested. You may have debtors. You may have other things. There's no guarantee with it. And even if there is, there's no guarantee that the people who set up the trust are going to follow through with your intent or your design once they have the money that you get. So the hard part is not necessarily transferring the money as much as it's having that kind of overreach and oversight. Having that kind of oversight. Okay. Number two, you could kind of do it guerrilla style. You could put $1 in an account in a bank somewhere and just hope that, assume that that banks will stay digital, that will never go away, that there'll be banks for hundreds of years, and that whenever you've long since passed, as long as some sort of digital entity keeps checking the bank account every month to check the balance, and they never find out that the account is run by a dead man and just seize it or something like that. As long as you're able to keep it going, and then at some point in the future it can recognize that, okay, a proper amount of money has been obtained, and then it could kind of, write an email, like that Nigerian spam, and say, there's millions of dollars in an account. If you follow these instructions, I can release it to you. And hope that anyone takes it seriously. But again, it requires some sci-fi elements. Requires that, banks still exist, money still exists, the internet still exists, and all in this form. Nobody ever passes a law that says that these accounts go away, or who knows. You're placing, again, you're putting it to faith that some entity will be there when some money is there. And to me, that leaves the third option, which I think is the best, in that there is some sort of growing concern or going concern. Now, let's look back to that pyramid example for a second, and we'll say that when Bill Gates wants to build a pyramid, he simply creates some sort of foundation or trust that watches some money that he puts away, and that he is there he lives during the formation of it, so he can set it to where he wants to go. He can hire the right board of directors. He can write the right mission statements, and he knows then that he can watch it for a little bit, because he'll have something, and then when he's gone, hopefully it will carry on in the traditions that he has set forth. But he has that luxury. But what's the alternative for someone who's not Bill Gates? Well, you could donate that money to some group that's working along at least the general themes of what you're trying to accomplish. If you like non-cruelty animals, you could give your money to the Humane Society or PETA if your politics were that way. And trust that they would fulfill, your, I won't say dogma, because that would be not very funny, but at least share similar outlooks. And you could hopefully, if the money was big enough, you could put some stipulations to it. But again, I don't know what the law would say if they got something from you, when you were long past dead. And what if your family could claim it? Or some living relative? Or nobody? Or if the bank just simply swallows it up? So, to my mind, the best thing to do would be to have some sort of company. And Well, eventually you have to say that this company is going to be outside of your control. Well, yes, you could hopefully set down some best practices that you want to see followed, but I think you could use this idea of this future and say that what are the things that we've needed for more than 200 years, because those are the things that most likely we will still need in 200 years. And that these would be food, shelter, land, buildings, power. I won't say computers, but something will be doing the function of computers, certainly, you would hope. Now, that is relatively recent. Transportation. There are many. There are many. But if you were able to envision a business model and push that along into something that could make money and very easy to operate, or very cost effective to operate, well, then you could pretty much put, like for instance, if you said that I want to start a company and I want to make sure it's here, a couple hundred years from now, and you were in New York City and you had $2,000, well, the best thing you could do would be to buy a hot dog stand, because people will always be walking around in that city and they'll want something to eat. Maybe that changes to a falafel stand, depending on where you are or where you're at. But you're just that lowest common denominator, as it were. That's cheap. So let's think of some companies that kind of follow that line. Now, let's say power, and specifically biodiesel. Right now, there are restaurants all over the country that pay people to take away their used grease, and we'll pay you to take it. And if you took it and turned it into biodiesel, well, in my mind, you could use that biodiesel to power the trucks that go to get you the grease to make the biodiesel. And you're talking like a couple employees per, and eventually you're going to have more biodiesel than you have need for in trucks. Now, you could also grow something like switchgrass. I've heard you could make about 1,000 gallons of biodiesel per acre per year with switchgrass. And then you could even take the switchgrass and then sell it as feed to farm animals. And you could do this on a completely solar powered farm that was completely energy independent, produce all its own power, all its own water, all its own biodiesel for the trucks. The trucks are a fixed cost investment, sure, but with diesel trading about $3.50 a gallon right now, how many acres, how many restaurants before at least a one-man guy needs a second man. And think about how many restaurants there are, how many places along interstates that with all that grease, and you can turn it into something that you can pour in your car, if you have a diesel. And there are more, many more.